who I am. I used to work at the Post, now I'm at CNN. I've worked at two very large media organizations that are kind of entrenched in their ways of doing things, whether it's with a print newspaper or with TV. And I've been brought in both places to serve as the disruption layer and break things and change the way we tell stories, which is incredibly difficult and weird. A lot of my work at the Post involved going into these A1 meetings where editors sit around a table and decide what's going to be on the front page of the newspaper, and me being like, so guys, what about the comments section? How do you feel about that? And they were like, are you for real right now? We're doing real journalism here. I was like, but what about the comments section? So some of the things I did at the Post included, I worked for the national and politics desks, so covered a lot of politics was the heart of what happens in DC and the Post, so a lot of things covering the government shutdown, covering the midterms, and thought of new ways to tell those stories. So for the shutdown, for example, we wanted to tell the story of the impact of the shutdown in 2013. And it was hard because the government is the place you turn to for information about who works there and how it's impacted. And nothing was working because the government was shut down. And their websites all went down. It was like, oh, how do we even do this? So we put this form out on the internet, asked people to tell us their story, basically just a simple what's your experience? We don't want to know what you think about the politics of this. That's a separate story. Just tell us about how this is impacting you. A comment section. And we changed the way we did that, where we structured the comments. So you had to, before you could enter any information in, we asked, can we use your browser to detect where you are? Is that okay? We'll get city state. Can you tell us on a scale of 0 to 5, basically, how this impacts you? So that it went from this doesn't impact me at all to it threatens my livelihood. And then tell us your story. And we'd set up this whole comment moderation system just in case. I didn't moderate out a single comment, and we got 3,000 comments. And the end of it, I worked with one of our designers and developers, and we put this in a big map. And it was color-coded from light pink to dark red. So light pink was it impacts me a little bit, and dark red was it threatens my livelihood. And that became the centerpiece of our coverage, because we could tell the story of how the shutdown was impacting real people. And it was very much using the comment section, which all the editors were rolling their eyes at. For the midterms, this was in the days when we thought Snapchat was for sexting, and I had to go into this meeting with all these serious political reporters and be like, hey guys, so you're all gonna download Snapchat now. It's gonna be awesome, I promise. You have no idea what you're doing, but that's okay. And we ended up creating this Washington Post Snapchat account, before the days of news organizations really doing that, and passing the account off to different reporters out in the field, and they showed us what their life was like. Took maybe 5 minutes out of their day. One of my reporters snapped his breakfast in the morning, which was leftovers from the night before, and that was how our story started that day. It was oh, this is what his life really is like. It's not all fancy and cool. So I did that kind of thing at the Post, and then I came to CNN, where I'm not attached to a specific desk or a specific beat, but my job is to think of new platforms, mostly messaging apps, but really any new social platform. So that includes things like Twitter Moments, Facebook Messenger, Line, Kik, things you've probably never heard of really. Instagram, not really new, but different for us. And find ways to build audiences, build communities, they're different things, report and tell stories, and just be there in a way that's meaningful and engage with people. So basically trying to break things a little bit wherever I am and tell stories in interesting ways. So I'm the person who does new platforms, and my first really big project at CNN was kind of an old platform where I told a story using voicemail. It's called Love Story. You can find it on Twitter at Hello Love Story. It was January. I had been in New York 3 months, 4 months. I hated it. It was really cold and dreary, and I didn't know where the people were. I seemed to see them on the subway, and then where the hell were they? It was just a very why am I here? What am I doing? And so I sat down with my boss in a meeting room, and we're having our weekly one-on-one and talking about life, and she's asking me how I'm feeling about the job and where I'm at, and I'm I'm just not digging it. Why am I here? Why did I leave DC? DC was such a great town. I'm look at New York. Where are all the people? And somehow this conversation turns into us talking about dating in New York and the kinds of stories we hear from other people, but we never seem to experience ourselves, where it was you don't remember like who told you the story or any of the specifics, but you remember like the weird details where he walked into the room and he saw her, or like they met at a bar and it was the most unlikely thing ever. Like the kind of stories your grandparents tell you where it's like, wow, this is like out of a novel. And we were like, why don't we do something? Like, why can't we get people to tell us these stories? We are a very large media organization. We have some sort of impact, some sort of reach. Like, why can't we make people tell us these stories? It's not really CNN, but you know, we're sitting here and we're talking about these stories and we seem to care about them. So what can we do? And that was how Love Story was born, where we decided we wanted to reach out to people, not in the traditional ways that CNN reaches out to people. And I went out on the coldest day of the year because, you know, make good decisions. And I like went to the art store, bought paper. This had to be like a no-cost project because it was a weird passion project for me. Printed out a whole bunch of flyers with a phone number, and put up these flyers and like made little business card size cards that we all kept in our wallets, and everywhere we went you had to leave a card. Like that was the rule. So I went to a bar, I went to a cafe, anywhere I went I would always ask, can I leave a card here, and just leave it with the phone number. That phone number was set up, so the mechanics of it a little bit, it's interesting, it was set up with a Google Voice number, so it went straight to Google Voice, and we set up a like a voice recording saying, you know, this is what the project is. We didn't put CNN anywhere on here because we didn't really want people to, it was kind of like the idea of the curiosity gap, which people talk a lot about with social, where it's like, how do you make people click? But it was, how do you make people call? Like, it's interesting, like someone is asking you for your love story. That's fascinating. I want to know who this person is and what the deal is. So the project, when I pitched this, it started out much bigger. I was like, guys, we need to go to refugee camps and like put up flyers there. And we need to go to like every bureau CNN has people in and like put up flyers there. Very quickly it got killed, where, you know, there are laws in different countries about putting flyers up. I learned very quickly. The legal department was not happy with me at all. They were like, weird new kid putting up flyers about voicemails, like what is going on here? But we put up these flyers and then we sat and we waited. I sent an email to like literally everyone I knew. I was like, guys, tell me your love stories, please. I really need it. Like, I don't think anyone's gonna call in, and I like can't have this fail because I hate New York already. We need something to work. And so we set up the Twitter account and we started getting some love stories. Very simple. We like shared them. We wrote little prompts and we shared the love stories. So
I was 18 and he was 20. The sign said, you can proceed unless stopped by an MP. He had seen me before and recognized my car and stopped it. Got my license and wrote down my name, took down my license number, and after I left, he called the DMV and got my phone number, and that night he called me. 3 months later, we got married. And 2 months after that, he went to Vietnam. He did come back. We were married for 39 years, and he passed away 5 years ago. And he was the love of my life, and it was just a chance meeting, and he was Mr. Right for me. And that's my story. Thank you. Bye.
So when I got this voicemail, I'm sitting at my desk with my headphones on. I start crying. I unplug my headphones and I sit in a pod with like all these dudes. And I was like, guys, you need to listen to this. And they were like, oh my God, you with your love stories. And I was like, no, really, you need to listen to this. And so we play this, and every single one of them got up and was like, I need to take a walk. So I just need to go take a walk now. And that was when I thought, maybe we've stumbled onto something. Like maybe there's something here. I don't know. It was maybe like the 10th voicemail we got. So in a weird way, like striking gold, like getting this kind of a story and realizing there was something here. Part of what I thought a lot about, like why voicemail and why this worked. And I think part of it is it's nice being able to imagine like the other person without being told everything. And also it's very easy for us to call and leave a voicemail. Like even though we read all these trend pieces about voicemail dying, like we all call and leave our mom's voicemails, right? Like that's what moms do. And it's an easy thing for us to do. It's an easy ask to pick up a phone, dial a number, and tell a story. And I'd done voicemail storytelling before this. At the Post, I had a project called This Year I Learned, where at the end of 2014, all my projects are kind of about like how I'm feeling about life. The end of 2014, we set up a similar Google Voice number and asked people to tell us what they learned that year. Again, didn't expect anything to come of it. And at that point, what I did, because I didn't know if it was going to work and I didn't know if voicemail was the right way to do it, I made myself call and leave a voicemail. And I never like participate in anything on the internet with anyone asking for my story or anything about me. And what I found was that it was incredibly easy and comfortable and almost confessional, because you know there's a captive audience on the other side. You know someone is going to listen, especially if you're seeing these tweets come out, right? Like you know something is happening with your story. And at the same time, you don't deal with anyone judging you, or like you don't see someone rolling their eyes or smiling or tearing up. It's just there's a space and someone is asking you to tell your story, which is really powerful. And it's very rare that we get these opportunities to just tell our stories. And it turned out this was a good question because people wanted to tell us their love stories. So then I took this and I like sold it around the room at CNN, where like I had my phone in my hand and I would go to everyone's desk and be like, you guys, you need to listen to this voicemail. Like went to the sales department, went to the graphics department, went to the video department, hoping that people would buy into it. And they did. It was, at this point it was February and Valentine's Day was coming up. It was like the perfect peg. So we built this beautiful page. The ad department sold an ad, which was great for us because then suddenly everyone wanted to invest in it. And we pulled out some of the voicemails that made us cry and were incredibly powerful and moving, and put them together. And we built a thing when we told one story, one love story.
He was the love of my life, and it was just a chance meeting, and he was Mr. Right for me.
I saw this beautiful girl walking ahead of me.
And I looked up, and he came walking into the room,
and she steps onto my subway car, and she ends up sitting next to me. We started talking, and one thing leads to another, and we ended up spending the next few hours talking together. And the next few days, we ended up sitting at the bar the whole evening and talking and really enjoying one another's company.
I just knew he was the one, and looked at him and said, "Kiss me."
She's like, I know this is crazy, and I've only known you for a few days, but I'm in love with you, and you just needed to know.
He makes my heart melt. He absolutely makes me nervous in a good way, but I'm falling in love with him.
So one of the struggles with a project like this, which I encounter a lot, because I'm the person who comes to people with an idea and I get really excited about the idea and I make sure we like make something happen. And then we like make this and I'm like, I don't really know what to do next. And that's something that I struggle with a lot, and we could have definitely thought about a lot more. Was we had all these phone numbers and we had all these stories and we made this beautiful thing and then it was over. And it could have been a thing that like lived on, but it's really difficult to make something that exists in like this limited capacity and make it something else without losing a sense of authenticity. And we thought a lot about like, can we spin this into a series? Can we like modern love this? So this actually happened like about the same time when the Modern Love podcast came out, and everyone was like, we need to make a podcast and like, get people to tell us their love stories in like a longer way. I don't have an answer, but it's just like something to think about with projects like this is, are you okay with it existing within like a small time span? Are you okay with it existing in this like small and limited way and that being enough? Or like, can we come back and do something again next year with love stories? Or can we like follow up with 3 people? It was like something where it became a thing, everyone got really excited about it, and then everyone wanted to use voicemails to tell other kinds of stories, and I was like, okay, maybe not. Like, great idea, but maybe not. So that's Love Story. And then after Love Story, part of the reason the project kind of like finished at this point was I got pulled into weird and exciting new things with messaging apps. So I'm sorry, I'm gonna show you like a promotional sizzle reel just to explain the apps, because I have a feeling most of you haven't heard a lot of them.
I raise my feet, I miss a beat from my seat, don't care, get off my back, I make it. I'm a about to crack. 1, 2, 3, turn around. Don't you watch me now, just turn around. Touch your knees, don't look, just turn around. Do it now, make me count to 4. 1, 2, 3, turn around. Watch yourself, why don't you turn around? Can't you see I don't need you around? Do it now, walk right through that door. Who could it be? Don't look at me so obviously. It makes me sweat straight to my head. I'm turning red, touch so unsaid, so I'm all set. And step outside, just hit me high. Before I forget. 1, 2, 3, turn around. Don't you watch me now, just turn around. Touch your knees, don't look, just turn around. Do it now, don't make me count to 4. 1, 2, 3, turn around. Watch yourself, why don't you walk right through that door?
So how many of you have heard of Kik? Oh, this is impressive. Cool. So for those of you who don't know what Kik is, it's a messaging app. It's really popular in the US, particularly with 13 to 17-year-olds. So the pre-Snapchat generation, as I like to call them. I worked on Kik at the Post. It was like, again, weird side passion project where no one understood what it was, so I could get away with it. And it's very like bot type news delivery or content delivery. And we launched on Kik recently at CNN. At the Post, Kik was very different. Their infrastructure was different, where I was like building like choose your own adventure games. And one of the coolest things I had done there was build an entire road trip across America where you would enter the state you're in, and I had to like manually enter all the neighboring states and be like, here's a photo of like something cool in your state. Where do you want to go next? And it would like take you to the next state. But at CNN, we're working a lot more on like news and like finding interesting ways to tell bigger news stories on Kik. How many of you have heard of Line? Oh wow, this is such a great crowd. So Line is really big in Asia. It's a messaging app. They're interesting because they're like very much built for publishers and brands, which most apps aren't in that sphere. They have like really cool stuff, like you can send stickers and make stickers, which is awesome. And I've learned a lot like working online that stickers are very different from emoji, which is like a thing I'm still wrapping my head around, where emoji are very symbolic, but stickers are like character based and have to have like a story attached to them. And then Facebook Messenger, I'm guessing everyone has heard of in this room, at least, hopefully. Yeah. So we launched in all 3 of these platforms in the last 2 months. So it's been very crazy. But getting up to that point of launch is always very interesting. And Messenger was the crazy one for me because I like went out to California and sitting with developers, and you start thinking about these things that you've never really thought about before. I was writing, we have a bot. And what the bot does every day is it sends you a daily digest of like top stories that I curate. And for every story, you can read the story, or you can like get a summary within the platform, and I tell the story to you within messages. So it's like you don't have to go anywhere. It's all written for like basically a text type exchange. And then there's the option to like say a keyword like refugees or Olympics, and we serve up a story. But what happens if someone says something where we don't have a response? What happens if someone says something like a bad word? What happens if someone says hello, or like tries to have a conversation with a bot? And suddenly I had to like create this personality for a bot in the span of like 3 weeks. And I turned to my bosses who were like, hey, great, we trust you. You go bot this shit. I was like, what do I do? And they were like, well, you should really make her like you. I was like, oh, so she's a her, we've decided. And they were like, yeah, you should like just say her name is Masuma. I was like, no. I have my own identity. I'm not a bot. We're gonna keep them separate. I haven't named her yet, but it is a her. And then I ran into all these questions about, so the response, like the standard response that our bot gives on Messenger when you say something where we don't know what to like serve you up is a little shruggy. And then it says, I'm not sure I understand you. What are you looking for? Like, this is how you ask a question. And in writing that, I went through maybe like 50 drafts of what I should write, because suddenly I was encountered with this thing of like, I want to be conversational. I want to be friendly. But language is also like very culture oriented, right? And like, am I being conversational and friendly in like a 20-something New York way, which wouldn't necessarily resonate with a 70-year-old in Iowa who I'm hoping is like talking to the bot, or someone in China who doesn't understand the same references as I do. I was like, okay, problem solved. I'll just use emoji as a response to everything. No one can misunderstand that. And then it was like, well, actually everyone can misunderstand that. And so we like came up with all these responses, and I was like really happy. I had a response for smiley face and sad face. And then I started thinking about, what if someone says smiley face ISIS? Like, that's very different from smiley face. I like that story. How do I respond to that? So just like a lot of different questions about even setting up something as simple as that, where you have to like take into account every possible user story for a product that has never existed in the past, and like get it up to the point where you feel comfortable putting it out there to tell stories in engaging ways. So we like went out and we had this great product, and then 4 nights later there was a debate in Brooklyn, and I am nothing if not ambitious. I was like, guys, I'm gonna live text the debate to everyone on Messenger. It's gonna be great. It was pretty great actually. Like the hardest thing I've done in forever, but we decided it would be cool if we have this thing where, like the way people use it, regular people, the way I use it is to talk to people, right? I text people. Wouldn't it be cool if the Messenger bot in your back pocket was like a reporter at the debate? Because I was the reporter at the debate. So what if I could turn that into a thing? But at the same time, I don't want to be that annoying friend who keeps sending you messages and you're like, can you just shut up? Like, I don't care. I don't want to watch the debate, which is why I'm not watching. So the like in between I came up with was that we sent one push notification telling people, hey, listen, this thing is happening. FYI, we're here and you have access. Like, you can say anything you want and we'll tell you about it. So just type debate at any point tonight and we'll give you the latest. And it mirrored any sort of live coverage we had anywhere else on the internet, which was fascinating to see how people were engaging with that. Where like people told us later on, we saw on Twitter, we saw people like send us notes where they were out to dinner and they had missed a big chunk of what happened that night and they wanted to catch up with the news. And it was kind of cool that they could just like take this out and be like, hey, what's up? What happened at the debate? And we could tell them kind of what happened at the debate. So that was like experiment version 1, where everyone after that was kind of terrified of me sending push notifications. It was like, you need to really think about the user. Like, the user is going to hate you if you send too many push notifications. And so I started playing with other sorts of experiments. This is one from recently. Also, it's like really fascinating to me, as an aside, that when you do screen recordings of your iPhone, it always makes it 9:41 a.m. and 100%. But that's just an aside. Where it was the first day of Ramadan, and we have a global audience, and I was itching to do something interesting. And so I built an explainer that was a choose your own adventure explainer in Facebook Messenger. No audio for this. It's a silent explainer. So that was like version 1 of, hey, we can do interesting things on here and we can break stories down in a way that makes sense, where you don't have to, a problem that I've been like trying to figure out an answer to for a few years now is, how do you explain really like all media is trying to figure out, how do you explain really complicated things in a way that makes sense? Like, how do you personalize an explainer? At one point I did something like years ago for like explaining some very complicated budget thing where it was like 3 versions, Dumb, Dumber, and Dumbest essentially, and like you picked where you were on the spectrum of understanding what was happening. It's something I've been thinking a lot about this week with Brexit, where it's like most people don't even know what Brexit means. Like, a friend of mine told me she thought Brexit was the name of a politician. It's not. It's Britain exit. It's the EU referendum. The UK is voting on the 23rd. So things like that, where it's like, how do you make it engaging in a way that suits everyone at their different interest levels and understanding levels, and how do you make it so that a story which is engaging in so many different ways can be engaging for every different person who wants to experience it in a different way. And this is kind of a start to think about that, where we can break down big stories into smaller paths that you can take through the story. Eventually you end up at the same place, right? You can like tap your way through the questions you have, or you can like just jump to the very end if you know a lot about something, but you get to experience it in your own way. So I took that idea, and yesterday was World Refugee Day, and we do a lot of coverage on refugees, and I was like, we should do something interesting here. Like, what can we do? My initial idea, which was ridiculously ambitious, was we should like take a messaging app and have a refugee like live text their day to us. That would be amazing, like see their world. That got killed very quickly. But I still like wanted to do something. And so we showed what a day in the life of a refugee looked like. So this is like the daily digest you get every day. So that was kind of cool. We took a story and we tried to tell the story using messages. It was a story that lent itself very well to being broken down into smaller parts, but I think the same concepts apply as they do everywhere else, where I'm trying to break down stories into like the very basic elements of the plot that exists or the characters within the story, and then repurposing that into whatever platform I'm throwing it into. So for the same thing online, which is not a bot, we send one story a day online, and they have this cool thing called a rich keyboard, where different news outlets and different brands use it in different ways. And it's essentially like a keyboard with 3 or 4 buttons, and you can design those buttons. And so I broke down the story in 3 buttons, where it was like, hey, this is what today is. This is how many refugees there are in the world. What do you want to know more about? Like, how do you want to experience this story? And people could select what they wanted to. So that is what I have, like the weird things I'm doing.
Thank you, Zheng.